guys, it's Eddie and today I am back with another movie review for you all. Now today's movie review is centred around the 2008 vampire horror film Let the Right One In, directed by Thomas Alfredson, and this movie centres around a young boy called Oscar who is 12 and he's being bullied very frequently at school, and it comes that one day he meets an intriguing character called Ely, another 12-year-old who lives next door to him. And it soon comes to pass that Oscar realises that Ely is not exactly who Oscar thought. There is more to Ely than meets the eye, and it actually turns out that Ely is a vampire. And really, this film revolves around their relationship and their sort of unfolding, sort of very sweet friendship and almost blossoming romance amidst the sort of supernatural elements of Ely being a vampire and Oscar obviously having to overcome that and accept that as time goes on, despite the horrors that comes with it. Now, this film I think is wonderful. I watched it very recently. I watched it while I was at uni in my spare time, and I was totally blown away by it. It's a really, really beautiful Swedish film, and a really beautiful film in general. I think that the thing that I love most about this movie is that, and the story in general, is that the fact that Ely is a vampire and the fact that there is a sort of blossoming friendship and romance that emerges between these two characters. The fact that Ely is a vampire is not sugar-coated throughout this film. It's not like Twilight where everything is okay. The kind of idea of being a vampire is romanticised. No, we get the full, gory, disgusting, repulsive horror of living the life of an immortal vampire through Ely, who is, you know, very shockingly represented throughout the movie. I think that Lena Lee Anderson is really brilliant in the role, and I think that the way that they portray Ely as this very mysterious creature, you know, with subtle lighting and the way that she constantly changes physically throughout the film, certain touches, certain lighting, certain frames really alter her appearance. So we're constantly intrigued by this character and where Ely has come from and what Ely's past is. And it's incredibly interesting to watch Ely transform throughout this film as we get to learn more about them. And I think what I also love is that there is this unspoken bond between the two main characters. The dialogue is quite sparse between them. It's very simplistic. It is childlike because the two are 12 years old, but it also has a hint of extreme intelligence. These two characters seem to know each other without words, without speaking, and it's incredibly beautiful to watch this very, very sweet friendship unfurl before your very eyes. And what I love is that the two actors have a beautiful sort of sweet chemistry, and they are incredibly subtle within their roles. And it's often more with the look than with speech. It's often, you can see these two minds totally clicking together, and it's so beautiful and so lovely, even amidst all this horror of the background of murders taking place and incredibly gory stuff, which is heavily juxtaposed between, you know, the sort of blossoming relationship between these two characters. But I really like that. I think it's an incredibly cool dynamic between the film. It takes you in lilts throughout the story. You get these really sweet moments with Oscar and Ely, and then you get these really gory moments involving, you know, the things that Ely is doing to sustain her life and to draw upon a food source. And I do really just enjoy the general plot of this film. I think it's different. There is always going to be a love story involved with vampires. We've seen it a lot of times with Twilight and the likes, but this story is different because I think it doesn't hide anything, it doesn't romanticize anything, it's incredibly real, and then it has its really cool little quirks to it with scenes like the Rubik's Cube and with scenes involving the Morse code. These really quirky little aspects to the characters' relationship really takes you through this movie, and it's incredibly lovely to watch. And that's why I think I enjoyed this movie so much, because I feel like the characters were so in tune with each other and so developed, and I think that that is perfectly portrayed by the characters on screen. And then we have, of course, these little sideline plots going on with characters such as Virginia, who is also struggling with the fact that she is being turned by Ely into a vampire, and we get some incredibly effective scenes with that. I feel like all of the traditions that we know and love about vampires, sunlight and having to ask for permission before they enter over the threshold, is still prominent within this story, but they are incorporated in such a different story that, you know, we get it in a totally different way, and I think that's so exciting, especially for a horror fan and horror fans who have seen, you know, vampire films churned out and churned out a million times, and it's kind of, you know, annoying at this point. This film is so different, and even though it centers around this sort of beautiful friendship, there are some really scary moments in this film. As I said before, the sudden touches that the director uses to focus upon Elian, their changing countenance, and the way that we get different versions of Ely throughout the film is quite scary and mysterious and weird, and it sort of adds to the whole sort of mysterious vibe about this character. We want to know more about them, but also, you know, it is a pretty gory film. There's really nothing left to the imagination. Everything that we see is on screen. And although there are certain things about the characters that are left ambiguous and are much more touched upon in the novel, everything that we see on screen with regards to violence and gore and blood, everything that we would expect with vampires, is certainly very prominent, and it's pretty raw and it's pretty gritty. So I quite like that. I quite like the honesty of this film. Again, the fact that it doesn't sugarcoat anything and it doesn't hide anything behind this romance that we see emerging between Oscar and Ely. I think this is a beautiful film. I really love the cinematography in this film. I think it's beautiful when it sort of takes you through snowy Sweden and sort of the beautiful scenery, and also the close-ups of these characters in really intimate scenes is just a joy to watch, despite its perhaps gory content at times. It's still a beautiful film in my opinion, and I really enjoyed watching it. There was a scene, only one scene, that really kind of bothered me, and that was the scene with Virginia and the cats. For those who don't know, I would just briefly explain that, shall we say that when Virginia, the character who is bitten by Ely in the film, is transforming or has transformed into a vampire herself, there is a attack on her by a group of cats, and all I would say about that scene is that the CGI of the cats, because obviously you couldn't have a bunch of cats mauling a woman in real life without some difficulty in creating that process on film. It does look a little bit corny, or just kind of like a little bit bad CGI. I don't think it looks particularly realistic. Like realistic enough, but it still caught my eye enough to be like, oh, okay, that doesn't look exactly right. But that was literally the only thing in that film that made me sort of take a step back and step back out of the film. That was it, really. That was my one complaint, and that was more of a production thing than anything else. I think the acting in this film is beautiful. I think they execute the plot and these really well thought out characters perfectly. I think it's got a little bit of everything. It still remains within the horror genre while having this really beautiful, individual, unique relationship between these two main characters in the film. I think it's got a perfect air of mystery. I think it's got incredibly endearing qualities, and I completely adored this film. I have nothing other than what I've just mentioned about that one scene negative to say about this film. It's a really a modern masterpiece in my opinion, and I think if not the characters being enough to really make you love this film, the production does too, and the cinematography and the direction. I think all in all, it's a fantastic piece of cinema, and I think, yeah, it's a really different horror, which is something that I greatly appreciate, and I really enjoyed it. And that's what I have to say about Let the Right One In. And if I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was really, really beautiful, and I loved watching it. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this review. Of course, you can always recommend movies for me to review by messaging me on my Tumblr or commenting below. But that is it for now. Hope you guys have enjoyed this review, and of course, I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye!